What is up, gamers? It's your boy Victor, coming at you live once again from the Big Healthy Coalition, and you know what time it is. It is time to break down Pro Tour Philadelphia, which your boy was a competitor in. Pretty pogged up, not gonna lie. Uh, gonna talk a little bit about preparations, the experience of playing in the tournament itself, and just kind of whatever else comes to mind. Whipped up a little Google Sheets for us all today, so sit back, relax, grab yourself a beverage, get yourself a little coffee. I got mine. Take you a little sip. Mm-mm. And let's get right on into it. So, Pro Tour Philadelphia. Babby's first Pro Tour. Now, I thought first things first, let's talk about. Oh god, I'm so in the way. Let's talk about the constructed preparation. So, as you all know, or at least I'm sure most of you know, this was a pioneer constructed format alongside Phyrexia OOB1 Limited. Thought I'd talk about the constructed side first, just because, that's just what I wanted to do. Boom. So I'll say, cold shot, cold frickin' shot. This is me messaging the group chat, the Mana Dorks, Untapped Potential shouts outs. And this was my expected metagame. This is what I was preparing for. I thought the top 4 decks in no particular order would be Black, Red, Mono, Green, Lotus, and Vehicles, and lo and behold, your boy was right. And if you are unaware, February 15th, over yonder is before the Pro Tour, so frickin' called it. So, kind of had an idea of what people might play. I figured surely there was going to be some deck that some pro team developed. What that might be, I had no idea. I didn't really have the resources to find out, frankly. So, this was kind of what had my eyes on. Turns out that deck in question was Is It Creativity? I think kind of one of the breakout decks of the tournament, or at least like a not super established tier 1 deck that a professional team brought to the table, ended up winning the Pro Tour. That's exciting. But I digress. So we got this expected metagame. I'm somewhat locked into the Pioneer metagame, so I was happy to see that I was correct on this front. That was mostly just a flex. But also, not only is it just a flex, but also, so if you are expecting that world, I think Mono Green is not a terrible choice. In my opinion, watching a lot of results come in prior to the Pro Tour, a lot of these Black Red decks, and this is, I should say, like maybe a few weeks before the Pro Tour, a lot of these Black Red decks were really cutting a lot of their cards, at least from my perspective. Somebody hadn't played a whole lot of green. They were cutting a lot of their cards that were really good in the matchup. There's a period in time where you weren't even really finding extinction events in the sideboard of Black Red. I know, call me crazy, but I'm telling you, there was a period. And during this time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get sweaty at this Pro Tour. I want to do well. I'm going to freaking play the Menace, Mono Green, which I know some of you who have watched my recent video, to the Victor Goes to Spoilers, my path to the Pro Tour, I talked a lot of shit about Mono Green, so you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, what a hypocrite. And yeah, you know what? Sue me. So I'm thinking about playing Mono Green. So I take Mono Green, I'm running it through some leagues. I've got a number of Cincinnati-based players that are like pretty freaking good with Mono Green, so I was using them as resources, namely somebody like Billy Caminos. He was a major helper in me kind of like figuring out how Mono Green works. Also, shout out Bobby Fortinelli, who had written a bunch of articles for CFB that I was referencing in order to kind of figure out how this deck works. And I know a lot of you are thinking to yourself, like, it's Mono Green. How hard can it be? And you know what? Fair. But I'll tell you, while the combo itself in the Mono Green deck, and I'm not going to explain that here. Sorry, if you want to know how the combo works, it's freaking wild. It involves chain veils and restorative bursts and all kinds of crazy nonsense. It's not a very difficult combo to execute in the sense that, once you start doing the things, it all just kind of starts happening. But a big difficulty with it is, man, the math. Man, the math. Oh, Lord. To figure out if you actually have a combo kill, in play, I was finding just like annoyingly difficult to figure out. I'm playing online, I keep like misclicking and shit, and executing the combo online versus in paper, horrible. I mean, you're brainstoning somebody's entire deck. And I tell you, I played like 3 or 4 leagues, and I'm trying not to swear. That's one thing I'm trying not to do in this video. Good lord, people were making me. I had like 3 matches in a row where people were fully making me brainstone their whole deck. I literally was timing out of matches like crazy in game ones, just like, I'm not very dexterous, I guess I learned, or at least when it comes to doing inputs on Magic Online, because I was just timing out all the time because all these people kept making me combo, and it was so annoying. It was so annoying. Even and I know what you're saying to yourself. Oh, why didn't you just pick all their win conditions, dude? Easier said than done. It still takes forever. So I was really, I was really disillusioned. I guess not. No, that's not a good word. I was really just surprised at how difficult it was to parse through combo turns, especially when it's in a spot where you're like really far behind on board and you need to combo on this turn or you're gonna die. And like you're close, but like it's not perfect, right? And you gotta maybe get a little bit lucky. Maybe you gotta be super precise with the game actions you're taking. Oh, okay, I gotta activate my cure on my chain veil, and then I gotta activate it on my this thing, and then I gotta untap my chain veil again. And it gets hog wild. Is all I'm saying. And I think I'm capable of learning it. I like to think of myself as quite a good student. But I just didn't have the time. Was my big thing. I didn't have the time. This is a very strange sort of deck, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So what does that mean? Well, you all probably know what that means. Oh, wait for it. Oh, wait for it. Oh, wait for it. I had to go back to my muse. Light Pauls and Friends, they got me to the Pro Tour, and I thought to myself, so I know there's this expected metagame that I'm anticipating. Of the 4 decks in which I listed, which let's do a quick reminder: Black Red, Lotus, Vehicles, and Mono White, I think you have a good matchup against Lotus and Green Red. Feel free to disagree. This is not the time and place for this conversation. Jump in the comments if you really want to. I think your mono white matchup is close. It's very play draw dependent in my experience. And your black red matchup is tough, not unwinnable, but tough. You can always just turn one Glade Cover Scout them, and then you're chilling, right? So I thought to myself, you know what? Heck it. I'm just gonna run auras. I'm comfortable with the deck. I get the lines. I've played a lot with, just oodles of different versions. I don't mean to sound like a little cocky little D-bag over here, but I think of myself very highly when it comes to understanding the auras archetype in Pioneer. And I still feel that way, despite a fetish that we will discuss here in a moment. But I was just like, you know what? I know the deck. I got an idea of what the metagame's going to be like. I'm just going to build a list for this expected metagame, and I'm going to run it. Haters be damned. They got me here. I beat some good players along the way on that journey, so why the hell can I not beat other good players with this archetype, right? So I would say this is timeline-wise, we're looking at maybe like a month before the Pro Tour, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I decided, you know what? We're locking it in. We're locking it in. I'm playing this. I'll figure out specifics later. I'll test some various sideboard options, but this is what I'm looking at. All right. Specifically green white with the Glade Cover Scout. That's a major part of this because I think Glade Cover Scout is really important for your black red matchup. But we'll get to more specifics on lists later. So, speaking of more specifics on lists later, here's my list. All right. Kind of hard to see for you all, but of note, I want to say we got 17 creatures. For some reason, there's one Paradise Druid up here, and they put the other one down here for whatever reason. 19 lands, 1 Boseiju, 1 Iganjo, 24 auras, 24, count them. And we are splashing a Kaya's Ghost form and a Hammerhand. This is some tech that I picked up after the RC. If you'll recall, I was not bold enough to play no off-color auras to be fetched with Light Balls and cast with Mana Confluence. I come to learn that was foolish. These 2 cards are very good. Having haste can I will say having haste can like theoretically win you games that you otherwise could not. I'll say since I've been playing with Hammerhand, it's literally never come up. I've never had a hasty win. I've been close. I've been close, but I've never had a straight up, light pause into haste into attack you for like lethal. It has yet to come up. Almost came up, but it is yet to come up. Could be a glaring Aegis, I don't know. But Kai's Ghost Form, man, I've been sleeping on that card. Card is way better than I realized. Especially with like Audacity. Audacity helps a whole lot. Having Sentinel's Eyes helps a whole lot. But yeah, not a lot of 4-ofs. Not a lot of 4-ofs outside of your creatures in which you have Glade Cover Scout, Skrelv, Light Paws, Skrelv. Huge addition to the deck. Going turn 1 Skrelv, turn 2 Light Paws is just so good in a lot of matchups. Still got some number of Paradise Druids. I think that is nice in, again, these grindy matchups where they have a lot of removal. Thinking like Phoenix, thinking Black Red, a good card to have access to. Went up on a Cartouche, which not super noteworthy, but I'll say, the thinking behind that was I was playing against a lot more like Sacrifice decks, and if there was some sort of like Tyvar deck with Priest of the Forgotten Gods, having more kind of superfluous bodies, I guess, for lack of a better word, is a nice thing to have. In the sideboard, some notes is go up to the full 4 Rune of Sustenance post sideboard. And this was like largely theoretical. Played out well in a couple leagues, but I didn't really get enough experience with it. But the theory was against like black red, against blue red, against removal decks. I should say damage based and like destroy based removal effects. You bring in all your Danto Vanguards, but you're paying a lot of life. Maybe you're losing races like shielders and stuff. So what do? You bring in all your runes simultaneously, which are kind of grindy in one sense because they do draw a card when they enter the battlefield, which is super nice. But you slap that on your Danto in order to just have lifelink on your guys. Really good in a lot of creature matchups, good against Gruul. So that was kind of like a sideboard plan, bringing your Dantos and your runes and profit. Additionally, we'll talk about this more in a moment. A lot of other lists had extraction specialists, which was a little bit of technology picked up by Michael Lech at the RC, where he top forward here in Atlanta. I think Patchup serves that role better, personally, but that's just me. Patchup, for those unaware, is 2 and a white, 3 mana worth of cards or creature cards, I should say, out of your graveyard. Put them in play. So you can put like a Glade Cover Scout and a Light Paws, or a Skrelv and a Paradise Druid, or a SRAM and a Skrelv. You can just bring back 2 mana or 3 mana worth of stuff from the graveyard right into play. Hushbringers, good against Angels, which I had played. I honestly, like, the biggest reason I played these were I had I played a league where I played against Mono White twice and Angels 3 times, and I went 1-4. It was horrible. So I was like, you know what? I don't. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I'm just putting some Hushbringers on my board for these matchups, and I'm praying it's relevant. Ended up being pretty relevant, but I digress. Giganta deck, some portable holes, some Besaiju's. Besaiju's important against temporary lockdown, most notably, and coming against green. Coming in a lot of spots, right? Besaiju. I don't need to convince you of that. Let's look at some other lists. Because I was not the only one so bold as to play auras. Actually, some legit good people played auras, which is very validating. Love that for me, because if you'll recall, there's no defined auras list. This is just like there's very few results of auras, just like generally in the Pioneer format. So I was kind of making my way through the muck trying to figure out my own shit, and this is what I came up with. But let's look at what other people came up with. So this is Benton Madsen, right? We all know him. He came in second at the Pro Tour, and I'll say his list was the most similar to my list by a lot. Also very similar, very similar to the RC Top 4 deck list by Michael Lech, who I'm not going to say friend of the channel, I'll say acquaintance of the channel. Michael, if you're watching this, I tried to friend request you on Facebook so we could talk auras before the tournament, but you didn't accept it. That's fine. I'm not mad. You're mad. But this list is almost like a carbon copy 75 from the RC. The only difference, of course, being cut 4 Paradise Roots for 4 Skrells. That's the only change in the main deck that I'm aware of. I didn't really look that closely. Uh, Going back, I noticed there's only 3 All the Glitters. I don't know if Michael was on that. But I kind of disagree with that. I think if you're on like the Glade Cover Scout plan, you want as many mass pump effects as you can get. You just need that redundancy. So I really like 4 All the Glitters. But aside that, I mean, extremely similar deck. I'm pretty sure the sideboard is the exact same as Michael's. Actually, I know that's not true because Michael definitely at least had a natural state. So, but I would say 70 of the 75 cards are the exact same from the RC top 4. So some old school. I won't say old school. I'll say, you know, old new school. This is, you know, it's the deck. It's the deck. Slightly better mana base, I guess, as well. Rage of Birds, like it wasn't legal that tournament, but very, very, very similar to that RC list. Some other Auras gamers, this is kind of hard to see, but Simon Nielsen tweeted this out. Writing, this is our Auras list that we went a combined 12, or excuse me, 18 and 12 with at the Pro Tour, developed mostly by these two people that I don't know. Really liked our version, kills turn 3 fairly often. You might be thinking to yourself, how does it kill turn 3 fairly often? Well, this version is playing 4 Light Paws and 4 Illuminator Virtuoso, which if you're unaware, 1 in a white, 1/1 double striker. When it becomes a target of, I believe, a spell or ability you control, Connive. I played 2 copies of this at the RC. I think if you are expecting a like combo heavy metagame, this is going to be a phenomenal version. No Glade Cover Scouts, so in my opinion, kind of the difference here. Of course, this is like an Abzan list, but the big differences between this and mine, aside adding concealed courtyards, are no Glade Cover Scouts, which is noteworthy because in my opinion, this version is basically saying I'm trying to kill you as quickly as possible, as consistently as possible. And I'm sure this list is quite good at that. I would imagine they struggle a lot more against Black-Red. Just my assumption. Other removal-based decks are going to struggle more than my list because of the lack of Glade Cover Scout. But if you're expecting like Mono Green, Lotus Field, Mono White, I would say this is probably a better list than my version. And frankly, based on the pairings I got for the tournament, I didn't play against Black Red once. I think this version would have been a lot better. I think this version actually would have been a lot better if I had gotten to like replay the whole tournament only with this deck. Nothing too crazy here. I'll say they did go for the Mox Ambers. Bold, I like it. I tried one league with that and I was pretty unimpressed, but I was also on 4, so I think this idea of going to 2 makes a lot of sense. They were playing a Loran's Escape. You can see it over here sneakily on the side. Horrible. Horrible. I'll say I hate that card. I played 4 at the RC and it was terabad. Of course this list is a lot different from mine, but if it were just me, I would have just freaking played the Tameo Safekeeping. That way, at least you can protect your auras if you need be. But this list also has Glade Cover Scout, so there's some differences that certainly make that change more justifiable, I guess. And there's also a very different aura spread. I'm not gonna like super dive into it, but I'm surprised by some of their choices. But they do got the Glaring Aegis, so I know they at least tested. Because not a lot of people came to Glaring Aegis aside myself. Very generally, the card is freaking cracked. I know I didn't play it at the Pro Tour. Hammerhand kind of took the spot of it, but. I digress. And then only 1 All the Glitters. Again, I think that's more justifiable without Glade Cover Scout, but I'm an All the Glitters enjoyer. They also have a Zealous Conviction, which is nice. I did think about playing a Military Discipline or this card just because like a Flash enchantment could be really sick with Light Pulse. It's not hard to create a scenario in your head where it's freaking sick. Do that in response to removal spell, get you a Kai's Ghost Form or something, get you a Glaring Aegis to make your toughness be able to survive some burn spells. Seems powerful, and a sideboard fairly normal. I like that they had additional Kai's Ghost Forms. That's something I wish I would have done. I like the Mogus's Favor. That's a cool card. I like it. Yeah, I would say this version a little bit creature light compared to mine, but a little bit more combo, a little bit more aggressive. I like it. Respect. Simon Nielsen and friends. Here's another old school list I found. Orzhov Ors by Ben Lundquist. This is actually something very, very late in the game, friend of the channel, Mark Anlicker, fellow Mana Dork, Untapped Potential, talked about, maybe this version is the best version. Now that we have Skrelv, going back to the good old fashioned Orzhov Ors, something I played years ago, uh, in like SGs and stuff, and it's a good deck. This version, I would say, again, I like it, I respect it. I'm surprised at the lack of Kai's Ghost form. I would have expected you to play like a little bit more if you're on Orzhov Wars, but maybe not. Maybe I'm a fool. Playing Thoughtseize as main, really interesting idea. I've never done that. That's something I'm gonna have to try. Uh, but just like generally speaking, I think this version a little bit more old school. I Yeah, not really all that much to say. A low aura count, I'll say I don't really like going below 22 auras. You just need to draw auras in your aura deck. Sometimes you like keep a hand and you never really draw auras and you die because of it. And 20 auras is like, I know it's a third of your deck, but it could be more of your deck, right? One thing I'm just now noticing as I look at this, I created this little PowerPoint yesterday, but I have not recorded until just now. For Fiendslayer Paladin, hate that. Hate that. One of the reasons I hate that is you think like, oh, but it's sick against black red, and then they just blood tithe harvester it, and you're like, God damn it, I hate my life. I just don't like the 3 mana cards. And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Victor, the Adanto Vanguards you played, they also died to they also died to Blood Tithe Harvester. And yeah, here's the thing: if you're playing auras, you gotta accept this. No matter what creature you play in your board for the black red matchup, they're gonna be able to kill it somehow, some way. There's literally, as far as I'm aware, aside like actual factual hexproof, there's no card that straight up black red cannot answer. I believe the best answer is Native Grace because it's a 2/2 hexproof and black. So the only card that kills it, as far as I'm aware, is Stomp, maybe Strangle if they play some number of those. But that's all you gotta do is give your thing 1/1, maybe 2/2 in the case of Strangle, and it's living that. So that's just me. Coolest, like it, respect it. Um, interesting. Something I'm gonna have to try in my free time for sure. The Thoughtseize is very interesting, and this person went 6-3-1. So bravo, Ben Lundquist. That's a name I'm familiar with, but I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. So let's move on. Talk about some limited preparation. All right, a little bit of limited preparation. I didn't do much. I didn't do much, if I'm gonna be honest. My biggest resource, I would say, and this honestly was very nice for me personally because I've never been a big limited gamer. I do a lot of like arena drafts for fun. I enjoy it, and I listen to a lot of limited content, namely limited resources. But in I'm trying to prepare for the Pro Tour. I maybe did like 10 to 15 drafts between paper, MTGO, and arena. I try to always do best of threes, and I consumed a lot of fucking content. I know I said I wasn't going to swear that much in this video, but apparently I am. Consumed a lot of content. I did a lot of 17 lands data diving. The big thing that I would do is I would go through 7-0 deck lists, or I would go through 3-0 deck lists in the traditional queue, especially on decks that I had not drafted. So, like, basically all the blue base decks and basically all the blue base decks, and I was looking at, okay, what does a successful blue white deck look like? What does a successful blue black deck look like? And I was just, taking notes. So I had like a bunch of notes in my notebook of just like what are the important cards for all these decks. How many 2-drops are they playing? How many 4-drops or greater are they playing? How many combat tricks are they playing? So that I was all just writing this down, how to like try to construct a good deck. All right, that was my biggest kind of source of preparation. Played some games, was familiar with the cards, but even to this day, I could not tell you what like most of the cards in the set are called. I just know them by what they do, which I think is, demonstrates that I didn't play that much. Um, but I felt honestly decent about my preparation, and of course, talking with fellow Pro Tour competitors about like cards they liked, etc., etc. But I felt like I did a fair amount of homework without actually playing as many games as I would have liked. But onto the Pro Tour itself. On to the Pro Tour itself. The event itself. So I thought I'd start my PT draft number one. We pack one, picked one, a foil Archfiend of the draw. So I was like, let's fucking go good rare. Like, love that for me. From here, uh, I'll say my first ever time draft, my first ever like super competitive draft. I've never played a sealed like RCQ, PPTQ, anything of the like that went to a top 8 draft. So I've never done a premier like high level draft where it's timed and all that shit. But so this is my first one. I was surprised at how not nervous I was. Just kind of looking through the packs, picking the cards, and based on what I had been hearing from now that the Pro Tour's over and competitors are producing content about it, is I was having trouble just getting two drops, and that was one thing I knew I needed two drops. So basically, anytime I saw a two drop, I just took it. And that's why you'll see we got two Blight Belly Rats and a Copper Long Legs. I was just taking it. Removal was extremely hard to come by. Only got one like removal spell in the form of Ruthless Predation. Got three Whispers of the Dross. I don't know if this deck was like properly built. Oh, also we got a Kaito and an Argentum Masticore. I ended up splashing the Kaito. Won me a couple games. And by a couple, I mean I can think of at least one that it won me. Never drew the Masticore. Sad. Won my first two matches, actually besting Austin Bercevich, my first like named big pro player I played against at the PT. Sick games, squeaked out this awesome game two on a so I mulligan match 1 to 5, lose easily, or game 1 I should say, lose easily, whatever. Game 2 mull to 6, barely win, just like barely eke over the finish line with just this like really cool. I proliferated them all the way up to 10 poison counters for the dub, super behind on board. And the game 3 I drew both my Archfiend and my Kaito, cast them both, won easily. I know, crazy, right? Ended up losing in the finals of that one. Quite sad. I thought I was going to 3-0 my opponent mulligan to 6 on blue red, but they just had a really, really good draw. I believe, if memory serves, they went 1, 2, 3, 4 straight up the curve. And I could have played, I think I could have maybe had a better chance. I had one moment where I had two Whispers of the Dross in my hand. They had one pump spell in their pool. At least I'm pretty sure. Maybe they had more, but from what I remember, only had one pump spell in their pool. I let them go into their turn with a 3-2. I double Whispers of the Dross did in combat, and they pump spelled to save it to win the game. Whereas if maybe I do that main phase, I'm in a better position. But water under the bridge. Trying to think if there's anything like really noteworthy that maybe people that didn't play in the P2 would be interested in. I guess I'll touch back on that pool concept. So at the beginning of every round, you got to look at all the cards your opponent drafted. So you did not know what their deck actually was, but you got to look at all the cards in their pool. You couldn't like write anything down, but so I would always just take notes of, okay, how many removal spells do they have and how many pump spells do they have, and that was like the big thing I was really focused on. And yeah. So PT draft number 1, 2-1, feeling good. That felt good, love that for me. Here's the rest of how my day 1 played out. So you see, won my first 2 rounds, lost the third round. We beat Selesny Angels, which, like I said, tough matchup. A small amount of the field got paired up against that round 1. Won game 3 on a mulligan to 5, and oh baby, my opponent was pissed. Honestly, it was kind of cringe, opponent, to be honest. You were really upset. Yeah, whiffed on a company, whatever. Don't play company if you're gonna get that mad about it. But I digress. Play against Thomas Enevelsen. Super cool guy. Thomas, big fan. I believe from Denmark or something like that. It played in like 18 Pro Tours. I was surprised I hadn't heard that name, but they were on Azorius Control and they won, unsurprisingly, because Azorius Control is a horrendous matchup for the Auras. Had 2 temporary lockdowns. I actually won game 2 through 2 temporary lockdowns. Never been done by me before, so that was cool. But then, yeah, lost the match. Beat Paul Rietzel, pretty pog, and honestly, not only did I beat Paul Rietzel, I fucking smoked his ass. Like, boom, boom, you're done. 2 games, easy. Paul Rietzel, super, super cool guy. very down to earth. And that was the one thing I would say for the most part, all of the players at the Pro Tour were super, super cool, super kind, super humble. Not super salty. It was quite a pleasant experience. I play against after Paul locking up day two here. I'm 4-2, playing against Gruel Vehicles. I get to this position in game three where I have kind of two options. I top deck a light pulse and I have two ores in my hand. I play the light pulse and I'm trying to decide what ores to put on it. I'm at six. All they have in play is a Reckless Stormseeker. They've been kind of bricking on their fourth land for a while, so I know they got some good stuff. My decision here was basically I can either make my light pause a haster, attack my opponent down to one. I also had a Glade Cover Scout with a Griff Spoon on it. That was the only other thing I had on board. Or I could just make it into a like nine. I could have made it into a 9/9 first strike lifelinker. In my head, I wasn't sure what to do. I decided to make it a big lifelinker. The reason being is if I drew any other aura from that spot, I would win immediately. Problem with having this big lifelinker is um, I had no evasion, so it was basically just like a big beater that they had to block every turn, and so that's what they did. I drew four lands in a row. They ended up resolving in a Crowan War, which had no targets, ironically enough, because all my guys had hexproof. But I literally was just unable to draw anything before the Crown War exploded, killing my guys. I was at like 60 life or some shit, and I just died because because I just bricked like literally 4 turns in a row. It was extremely painful. After the match, my opponent was like, "Oh, I was surprised you didn't just take me to one and then kill me with the Glade Covers guy, which was a 2/1 flyer." And I was like, "Oh my god, like that was so stupid. Why didn't I do that?" In hindsight, though, I actually don't think that was the right play because I was at 6 life. They had a Reckless Stormseeker in play, so if they have like basically anything, I'm dead. Um, so yeah, that sucked. That was a bad loss. Shout out Lorenzo, Italian player, young buck, 18, super nice. Was a pleasure meeting you. And then I played against William Thompson on Angels, who was kind of a sussy baka, tbh. Put some sussy shit in the match, but I digress. And this was one of the most upset I've ever been. Not actually. But I was pretty bummed out. I win the first game, on the draw, no less. Felt good. And then I mulligan to four in back-to-back games. Like so frustrating. And not only was it like I mulliganed to four, and I was like, oh man, I should have kept that six. It was like eight of the most consecutive unplayable hands you've ever seen in your life. Which, frankly, if you're playing auras, you one thing I've learned, you gotta freaking deal with it. Basically, a similar thing happened to me with against Lorenzo, where, for context, I had 19 auras left in my deck, 4 draw steps, bricked on all of them, died. Sad. Played against Angels, just bricked on all my opening hands, died. Sad. So I end the day 4-4. Not great, but hey, day two of my first Pro Tour. I'm feeling pretty good. Went out to a nice Asian restaurant by myself, sat at the bar, had myself like a $20 glass of rosé, and then some and a little appetizer. It was also like $20. It was crazy. The nice restaurants, man. But had a nice meal, had a nice evening. Went to bed, ready to battle in day two. Here's my second PT draft. I pack one, picked one, a Kaya Intangible Slayer. Now I know this isn't like the sickest bomb ever in this format. It's a very fast format. But I figured, it's a mythic planeswalker. How bad could it be? Or actually, technically it's rare, but how bad could it be? I ended up getting another Archfiend of the Dross. I believe I don't remember if that was pack two pick one or pack three pick one. I definitely remember I got past this Glissa in pack two. I believe pack two pick three. I I just took this Glissa because I was like, I don't want to play against that, and I'm already like probably in black. Maybe I'll be able to splash it, and ultimately I was able to splash it with the Atlas, Forest, and where is it? And the Mirror Convert. So I had 3 sources for that. Um, I thought this was a good deck. I made one of the biggest punts ever, just ever. Uh, to contextualize it, I have a 1/3. My opponent has a Cacophony Scamp. When it dies, it deals damage to a target equal to its power. They have a 2/2 first striker, my 1/3. They attack with their 2/2 first striker, like threatening a pump spell. I'm like, you know what? If you got it, you got it. I block. They're like, okay, damage. I have a 1/3 with 2 damage marked on it. At my end step, I have this Vraska's Fall, 3 mana. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to use my mana. cast it. I cast it, they sacrifice their Cacophonous Camp, deal 1 to my 1/3 with 2 damage marked on it. It dies. I end up losing the game like 4 turns later with an Archfiend of the Dross. My opponent is at 2 life, and they kill me for Xaxes damage. If I do not make that Vraska's Fall play, if I literally Vraska's Fall was not in my hand, I think I win that game. I end up winning game 2, thanks to Kaya, and then I lost game 3 to that stupid fucking Hazardous Blast, really cringe card. And then, I'm trying to think what happened match 3. No, that was match 3. Match 2, I lost fair and square, and then match 1, I won fair and square. So didn't draw as many rares this go around, which was sad. But I will say every time I drew Archfiend of the draws, with the exception of that one time I messed up, it did win me the game. Crazy card. If you see it, draft it. That was a sad one too. I think this should have been a 2-1. I think this deck was capable of a 2-1, but play bad, get punished. And then, kind of the wheels fell off a little bit after that. So I'll say again, we are 5-7. No, we are 5-6 after the draft. Not feeling great. Play against Lotus Field combo. So if you'll remember, my last round on the day prior, I had mulliganed to 4 and to 4 for the lose. Against Lotus Field combo, what happens? I mulligan to 5 and then 4 once again. And not good 5s or 4s. It was like the most maddening 2 matches of my life. So let's do some math. 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 3, that is 15 mulligans in 2 matches, and frankly, none of them were even close to keepable. That was the worst part. It was just really, really bad. A lot of mulligans. A lot of mulligans. Grr, I was so pissed off. So from this point, I was like, fuck, man, I gotta win out to requalify for Minneapolis. Keep 7s against Is It Phoenix, a matchup I was worried about, win easily. Despite my best efforts to throw against mono green, I do end up winning. The reason I say that is I win game 1. Game 2, I am probably going to win, but for some reason I attack a 6-3 Light Pause into a 4-4. What's it called? Over Troll. I just attack into that because for some reason I got like all bent out of shape in my head, and I thought I put on something that I either gave it first strike or flying, but I didn't. So they just blocked and killed it, and I was like, oh fuck. And I lost that game, ended up winning that. And then, of course, friend of the channel, Alex, North Carolina player who I'd met at this tournament, we were chatting it up a whole bunch in between rounds. He was on Azorius Control. We were kind of like been sharing the same record hall tournament. We were lamenting potentially having to play against each other. And of course, in round 15, we're both 7-7, have to play against each other. And of course, he's got 4 fucking temporary lockdowns in his deck. I lose, even despite him making a pretty colossal rules error that nearly cost him the match. But I was unable to convert. Felt bad. And then I played against Cherry X-Man, who's a streamer. Nice guy. Win game 1, lose game 2, and then I just kept like, at this point, prize didn't matter, and I didn't think there was like any reason to actually play, so I just kept like a horrible hand game 2, and it didn't pan out, and I just scooped on I think I scooped on turn 2 and was like, hey man, you got it, congrats. Nice guy, and again, all my opponents, super cool. I had no problems with any of my opponents. The one Salty Angels player that was funny, and I had the one sussy Angels player. So I guess maybe if you play Angels, maybe you're not my kind of person, but but I digress. Yeah, so 7-9, not like a terrible record. Didn't feel too bad about that. I did come to learn after I kind of like conceded-ish that round 16 that there is a sort of running tally for points you accumulate in Pro Tours in the season. If I would have known that, I probably would have played it out a little bit more seriously, but this also assumes that I qualify for subsequent Pro Tours, which I would like to do. But let's move on to miscellaneous thoughts and takeaway. So, man, a little bit of the competitive spirit at the Pro Tour was so sick. Everybody there was good, and guess what? I was fucking good too. The only 2 people I knew about prior to playing smoked them, and it gave me a lot of confidence. I'm now much more confident in myself as a player. I was stoked at how not nervous I was playing against a lot of these really freaking good players. just one match at a time. And man, I tell you, when I was 7-7 waiting for those pairings to go up, I thought I was gonna like freaking throw up. Like the the emotions were so intense, and man, that's why we freaking play the game, man. You know, like very rarely in my life do I get to experience something like that, and it was so dope. It was so dope. The drafting was sick. Felt really cool. Just it was so sick. They had like a players lounge. They had like coffee right there. You know, it was just dope. The vibes were sweet. I don't know if I'll ever play a luck deck like Auras again in a tournament that like really matters to me. Uh, I'm a fan of consistency now over most things because as we saw, Benton Madsen he was sweeping through the competition. I tell you, I was watching some of his matches. He was keeping a lot more sevens than I was. That's for sure. I still did okay. I did okay. But you know, my deck let me down, which isn't too terribly surprising. Very variance, very luck deck. You know, you're playing Lake Scout. You know, you're automatically like huge luck deck. Um, Meeting new people at the event was awesome. Met a lot of cool people. Met a lot of people that I've known about their existence for like 10 years, but they had no idea who I was. You know, thinking Paul Rietzel, thinking Austin Bursovitz, thinking Gabriel Nassif, thanks for the photo. I'm thinking LSV. You know, I got to see all these people. I'm just like, dang, like, I'm here with y'all. That was sweet. Um, the fire rises, man. I tell you, going to the Pro Tour, you want to go back. If you ever go to the Pro Tour, you're like, damn, I gotta get back there. That was the sickest tournament I've ever played in. Something about 16 rounds too. You're like, this is like legit. Like if you're playing a 16 round tournament, you're like this matters. Every round felt like it mattered. Making day two felt like it mattered because it essentially cut half the field. Um, it's just like it was like man, like going 500 at like any normal event, I would be pretty disappointed. But at the Pro Tour, I was like, yo, I'm good at this game, yo, and it felt good. And I'll say I'm not no cap, no memes when I say this. The best part for my personal experience being a first time ever playing at a Pro Tour was all the support I got from my local community. My buddies were gassing me up. I was getting messages from people all over the Cincinnati area, which is where I'm from, just wishing me luck. After many rounds, you know, it was awesome. And frankly, I had to like hold back tears of joy on more than one occasion. Just all the support I was getting from my local community was really heartwarming. Was really heartwarming. Love that. Love that for me. And yeah, just made me feel much more connected to the Magic community as a whole. Getting all that support. It was really nice. Um, and yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. Uh, Best Magic tournament I've ever played in. Obviously, didn't have the finish that I would have liked, but hey, I was there. I was doing battling, and I feel like I deserve to not maybe not deserve, but I'm capable of being there again. Me being there was not a fluke. And you know what, bitch, I'm coming back, and I'm taking the next one down, yo. So catch me in San Diego probably, and go off on a little high note here. Boom. Boom. The man, the myth, the legend. Me and he and me. And look at this dude. Ain't no hover hands from that man. This man knows what's up. This man knows what's up. It's actually pretty dope. I think this is emblematic that LSV also didn't have the greatest tournament because we were sitting next to each other like it was like 4 rounds in a row or something like that. He was right there, which was sweet. Just getting to be like, hey, look, there's LSV. I could have got paired up against him this round. But yeah, all right, bam, Finn. That's all I got for you. That was my experience at the Pro Tour. Sick, 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 sick. 10 out of 10. Want to go back. Um, Not looking forward to playing Standard, but you know, maybe it'll be super fun. I've been playing Soldiers online lately, and that's been pretty fun. So look for me in San Diego. I'll be playing some RCQs. Still need to get qualified for Dallas. I've yet to play an RCQ for that tournament. So be looking at the schedule, trying to figure out how to get myself over there. And yeah, that's all I got for you. I really got to poop. I'm gonna go do that. Then I'll edit this video and I'll put it right out And then I've got like 5 or 6 vintage cube drafts in the bag that I've yet to edit and put out there. So look forward to those as well. Peace. Click all the buttons, do all the things. Comment, subscribe, like, uh, bells, and yeah, that's all I got for you. All right, see ya.